Everybody, we are live. It is Mobility Wednesday. It's the view from the top. It is, well, whatever the time, wherever you are in the world, 4 p.m. on the East Coast, 4 p.m. in the UK, 11 a.m. in the East Coast, whatever it is, wherever else you are in the world. We are live for a fabulous subject. We've got people coming in from all over the world. I see Laura O'Connell from South Carolina, Florencia Escobar from Dallas, Serbi Sharma, Ellen Kelly from Atlanta. People are coming from all over the world. It's so exciting to see you all here today. And we've got dozens and dozens and dozens of you. We're already creeping up to nearly 100 people with us on stage today. And for those of you celebrating, Eid Mubarak to all of you. And absolutely wonderful to see you all for today's show. We're talking about a really important subject today, and I don't think it's a subject that we've ever discussed before. Indeed, I'm not even sure where it's ever been discussed before, because today we're going to talk about project mobility. Okay, and what do I mean by project mobility? Well, we'll get into that during the show with our wonderful guests, but we're talking about where you're moving a whole bunch of people on a particular project, maybe a consulting project or an internal project. And so where you're moving people in mass to do a particular project is a really important area. And as I said, it's not one that's been discussed before. And we've got some great technology we're going to be sharing with you. So everybody, you know how it works. Please join in the conversation. Tell us who you are, where you are. I see Brian Loud's come in, Erin Venables come in from Cartwright, Sherry has come in from Vialto, we've got Stephanie coming in from Philadelphia, we've got Drew coming in from San Francisco. We got Cara from Houston. I mean, literally people are coming in from all over the world. Now, as ever, of course, you can get your CPE credits. And if you'd like to get your CPE credits, they're here. So if you want to get them from ERC, whether it's your GMS or your CRP credits, the code is there. That's if you need your credits from SHRM or from HRCI, then courtesy of our really good friends at Rocket Mortgage, then the codes are there. I'll leave that up there for a moment or two. If you need those codes, then all you have to do is jot down the relevant number and use it when you apply for your CPE, or take a screenshot, or get a camera out and take a photo of it. Do whatever you want, but I'll leave those codes up there for a moment. Now, next week, I'm really delighted to say we've got a true legend of our industry on the show. Next week, we've got Spencer Reynolds from Takeda, who's worked, well, in many different locations around the world, and indeed for a number of really important blue chip companies. And he's going to be talking about what we've called a career well-traveled. So he's going to be talking about his career, some of the things he's learned in mobility across different industries, and indeed where different industries are different and where different industries are the same. And we're even going to get into moving with pets. And if we're lucky, one of his pets will actually join us live on the show. So we've got a fun show lined up for you next week. So that's next week. As I said, we've got the wonderful Spencer Reynolds with us from Takeda. Anyway, what's been going on this week in our wonderful world of global mobility? Let's see what our breaking news is this week. We have it, all the breaking news in our industry from the last 7 days. Congratulations to everyone who's been promoted, everyone who's moved job, And for those of you who are looking to move job, loads and loads of wonderful job opportunities out there. And as I said earlier, Eid Mubarak to everybody celebrating. So all pretty exciting stuff. Now, of course, as ever, we're going to be talking about immigration. And as ever, we have Julia Onslow-Cole with us. So you know how it works, everybody. I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times. Hit the heart button, hit the like button, hit the applause button, and let's welcome onto our virtual stage the one and only Julia Onslow-Cole.
Hi, Brian.
Hi, Julia. Great to see you. And many congratulations. I know Fragment in the UK have just celebrated or are just celebrating their 20th anniversary in the UK. And I know you've got a big celebration planned. So many congratulations to you and all your colleagues at Fragment for that milestone achievement.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, so Julia, what are you going to talk to us about today?
So today I wanted to fit in with your theme of project working. And what we're seeing at Fragment is a lot of companies are moving a lot of people onto projects. And we're particularly seeing this into and outside of China. And I did mention this a few weeks ago when I did a China update to say we were not seeing a lot of long-term assignments going into China, but a lot of short-term moves. But it's really a global trend. Now, if you're like, for example, I'm giving you some examples. We've recently moved 1,000 people into China on a project. It's a short-term project.
1,000 people. That's
1,000 people. And so just to give you a flavor, so it was a company in China, and basically they're manufacturing and they've got a new supplier on board that's doing a critical part of their manufacturing. But that supplier had to be trained by people from outside of China. So we brought in 1,000 people quite quickly to China. And then we've got a couple of examples where we've taken one project was 400 people and another 500 from China, mainly actually into Europe, but also sometimes into Asia. And because of, COVID, there's a huge pent-up demand. So it's a really pertinent topic. Now, it used to be a very bumpy process. When I say used to be, up until about April, it was, because the consulates, both inside China and outside, there were these terrible delays. But things are much better. Certainly the Chinese consulates are better overseas, outside of China. And then the main ones in China, US, the UK, Belgium, they're much better. Now, if you have Chinese citizens who are leaving China for project work, there's a few top tips. So I'm just going to say, the first one is they have to apply where, you have to obviously know where they're going and they have to apply, but they should apply from the city in which they have a household registration. So this isn't always obvious, but for example, if you have them working in Shanghai, their registrations in Beijing, they will have to apply in Beijing unless they've got a domestic resident permit for Shanghai. The second thing to be aware of is if you're moving Chinese citizens on a project out of China, there's often additional security clearance that they need that is an additional requirement over other citizens. So this is particularly true, say, if you're moving them to Thailand or Malaysia. The other thing is everyone talks about them needing an exit permit, but that's not true at all. So they don't need exit permission. And is
that a new change, or has it been like that for a while?
No, it's been in for a while. But the other thing you should be aware of, a lot of people keep talking about, this country or that country have signed up to the Hague Convention abolishing the requirement of legalization for foreign public documents. And you do keep hearing this. Saudi Arabia, for example, recently did this. China will do this in November. And it sounds like it's really boring, but it's a huge improvement, because once they sign up to the Hague Convention, then the whole process of signing off documents is much easier. Now, if you have foreign nationals on assignment in China, which often we come across, and you want to put them on a temporary project overseas, you have to be really strict about the requirements to actually say they are leaving China. So they're the ones that have to give notification, foreign national in China, and you have to give notification with a certain amount of days. Oh, there's a very helpful comment. Thank you very much, Sherazada, about Philippines needing exit permission. Yeah, that's very helpful. But going back to China, if they're leaving, foreign nationals just only get this 30-day window. So you have to be very careful about the timing. And also, we've talked recently, just a few shows ago, about that APEC traveller. Do you remember that? That was the special provisions for people who are traveling around Asia as businessmen or women. And China is a participating country, so there might be some sort of really good benefits there. And then just a few more extra points to say that obviously, if you're leaving China, you've got to look very carefully at the business visit rules of the country you're going to see if you can fit into those rules. And you can keep, if you're a foreign national, you can keep your work permit in China going. And then when you return, there's COVID-19 tests are sometimes in place, so you've got to look out for those. And then finally, if you're taking people into China, so we just did this project, as I say, 1,000 people into China. The key thing to remember about China is they have very generous business traveler rules. So they're generous, but the two things you can never do is you can never stay more than 90 days cumulatively in a calendar year. And the second thing is you must not be paid in China, not by your company or by the supplier to your company. So if you keep to those two rules, the list of activities you can do in China is fairly wide and much wider than reciprocally you get outside. So I hope that's helpful, but it's a very, very pertinent topic, and I'm very much looking forward to what Nitsan and the fantastic team and Pankaj have to say, because anything to do that you can do to technicalize this whole issue is really great.
Okay, well, thank you so much for Julia, Julia. And yeah, we've got a lot of really cool stuff to show the audience in terms of how we can use tech to manage project mobility and indeed create personas, so you can look at sample cases of people moving. So all of that you'll see. So everybody hang on, we've got some amazing tech we're going to be showing you towards the end of the show as we go all through this and we talk about project mobility. What we're now going to do is bring our change maker on for the week. Our change maker is Darren Grist from RMIT University. Now, Darren is based in Vietnam, and the internet there isn't always as great as it could be. So we're hoping that this all works okay, but bear with us if there is the odd crackle, but we're going to try our best. So everybody, we're going to bring Darren to the stage. So you know how it works. Hit the heart button, hit the like button, hit the applause button. As for the very first time ever, we welcome onto the View from the Top live, Darren Grist. Darren, how are you doing?
Hi, Brian. I'm good, thank you. How about yourself?
Good, good. The sound seems to be holding up so far. So, Darren,
hopefully it'll keep that way.
Absolutely, and we're so delighted to have you on the show. You're in Vietnam working for RMIT University. Tell us a bit about RMIT University, because people in other parts of the world may not necessarily know it that well.
Of course, it's an Australian university, and we've got quite a large campus over here in Ho Chi Minh City, as well as a smaller one up in Hanoi. So in this part of the world, it's a relatively well-known university. In terms of mobility, we're relatively small, relatively new, in that we've got, certainly at the moment, I've got a blank canvas to work with in terms of getting policies up and running. In terms of movement, we probably only have maybe 20 assignments per year as such, but we do have a lot of business travelers and a lot of compliance risks at the moment, which we need to work on.
And where did you work before RMIT? What's your sort of career journey?
Sure. So I was previously, before coming to Vietnam, I was at Agoda in Bangkok for 3 years. Before that, I was at IHG in the UK for 3 years as well. And then before that, I was in-house at, not in-house, professional services at EY doing the expat tax returns and advice.
Right, so you switched from the like many of us, you switched from the provider side to the in-house side, and you're in Ho Chi Minh City, but your family are still in Bangkok. So
yes,
let's give them a shout out. Let's give us your family names. Let's name check them.
So the wife, Christina, and then my 2 kids, Ava and Brendan.
Okay, so Christina, Ava, and Brendan, if you're watching, big hugs and love from everybody in the global mobility community worldwide. So, Darren, you've got a bit of a passion for technology, which is why you've joined the Changemaker program. Tell us about what you like about Changemakers and what's your passion for technology.
Sure. So it's nice just to be able to work with other like-minded professionals who share the same interests, who want to improve the mobility world from a tech perspective and make things easier. From the technology side, it's literally the efficiency it can bring to your work, and it makes things a lot easier, especially when it comes to me, especially when it comes to the tracking. It saves me a lot of pain from previous employments.
And I think you said when we were chatting earlier that you're particularly interested in the expense payment technology that we have.
Yes. Yeah, our whole expense reimbursement process here is painful, to put it very politely. So I am actually looking at implementing that over at RMIT, which would save my team a considerable amount of time, and also make the employee experience a lot better for our new hires in particular coming in from overseas.
Okay, well, Darren, we love having you as a change maker, and as with all the change makers, if you like, the quid pro quo for having you as one of our advisors and helping us out is we also support a charity that each individual change maker has chosen. Tell us a bit about your charity. I think it's for myasthenia, which I must be honest, was not a condition that I was aware of before. So tell us a bit about this nasty condition, myasthenia.
Yes, the name of the charity is MyAware, and like you, Brian, I wasn't aware of it until my grandfather suffered from it. So myasthenia is an autoimmune condition which affects the muscles which you have more control over. So, for example, your arms and legs, whereas other muscles such as the heart, they're unaffected by it. So generally, it weakens you and makes you more fatigued as time goes on. So you tend to be more active during the mornings. As the day goes on, you become more tired. You steadily get worse. It's certainly the case of my grandfather. He used to live a very active lifestyle, and then over time became housebound as a result of being impacted by this. There is no cure to myasthenia, and it's controlled via quite a lot of medication, which is obviously not an ideal position to be in, although it does at least allow you to continue to live some kind of life. So yeah, it wasn't a nice thing for my grandfather to go through, and hopefully with the support of yourselves and other people around the world, it's a condition which we can hopefully cure one day. And
I know you said that your grandfather pretty much on his deathbed asked you to support research into myasthenia.
So he basically didn't want any flower tributes or anything like that. So it was very much, he wanted support to this charity which helped him to live a bit longer than he otherwise would have done, and give him more of a chance to say goodbye to family, I guess, and loved ones, especially considering that the family overall is spread around the world. So it gave him a bit of extra time to say goodbye to people as well.
Well, Darren, you're doing an amazing job in supporting the myasthenia charity and also raising its profile as a condition, because I think we both agree it's not as well known as sadly as other conditions. If we can help in any little way, if we have helped in any little way, then I'm just absolutely delighted that we can do that through the Changemaker initiative. So, Darren, thank you so much for being on the show. I know you're going to stay with us during the course of the show. We'll bring you back at the end. I also know it's pretty late. I think it's what is it? It's 20 past 10 for you now.
10,
yeah. 11 by the time we finish. So we appreciate you staying up to watch the show, and everybody in the audience, perhaps, put your hands together virtually and clap or applaud, and let's say goodbye to Darren. And we're going to bring on our producer Tally just to tell us what the latest Benivo updates are. And then after that, we're going to go into the section talking about project mobility. So everybody, give it up for the great Darren Grist and all the wonderful work he is doing in supporting myasthenia and in being a change maker. And join with me as we welcome Tally Goren to our stage.
Hello, Brian. Did you like the new video?
I love the new video. Tell us a bit about it.
Yeah, so starting from next week, I'm going to share my my screen time with more of the Benivo team, so you'll get to know their faces too. And you saw them there. You're going to see them on the screen. But today I'm still with you, and I'm going to stay at the back always to make sure you all look fabulous. But for today, we're going to introduce project mobility. And for anyone who's going to be, I'm sure you're going to be excited about it. And if you want to give it a try, or if you want to, read more about it, I'm going to share the link to that. Also, we were talking a lot about the Benivo DPT, and we're going to start doing demo sessions. And it's not only going to be a demo session for how Benivo GPT is working, but in general, how can you harness GPT for your mobility needs? So like Nitzan was demoing in previous shows, you can do the same. So we're going to have demos, and I'll share the waiting list link, but we're going to share specific links for the demos. And yeah, this is for corporates only, but it's going to be very interesting. Last thing, I mentioned it last week. I want to mention it again. If you're in the US, please use our benchmark survey. And of course, as always, we're going to share the results first with the ones who are going to join the survey. And later on, we're going to create a report that we'll publish to everyone. So it's going to be a really important survey. Please, if you're in the US, join it. And that's it.
Brilliant. And yeah, if anybody wants to know more about GPT, which is taking the world by storm, then either join the waitlist or just reach out to anybody in the Benivo team, and we'll talk you through it however you want to use it. It is just mind-blowing what it is doing, and it's creating tens of thousands of hours of productivity savings. So anyway, we're going to move on. We're talking today about project mobility, which is a huge area that has not really been discussed maybe as much as it could. So everybody, I'm going to bring onto the stage our CEO, Nitzan Udan, and Pankaj Bhatia from Benivo. So everybody, hit the heart button, hit the like button, hit the applause button as we bring onto stage to talk about project mobility, Nitzan and Pankaj. Hey Nitzan, hey Pankaj, how are you both?
Good, Brian. How about you?
Yeah, I'm just absolutely delighted to be on the show with you guys today because it is such an important subject, and it's
Wait, Brian, before you say that, say why you are delighted, right? We are here to celebrate a big milestone you had yesterday. We're talking about scaling. You've been scaling.
I've been scaling up. I have in the past been called the grandfather of global mobility, and I'm delighted to say that I've added another one to the list. So my daughter Emma, who those of you who know about the Emmas from FEM will realise the link there, has just had a baby number 4. And that means I now have 8 grandkids. So maybe I really am the grandfather of global mobility with my ever-growing tribe. Mother and baby and siblings and dad are all doing well. And yes, I am over the moon to announce the latest addition to my family.
Congratulations. So we'll just ask everyone to hit the like button to celebrate with you, right?
It's certainly, we talked about productivity, and she certainly has been very productive in the last day or so. So for anybody that's ever gone for an Emma Award, then that's where it all came from in the first place. Anyway, moving on, we're going to talk about project mobility, which somehow also sounds rather relevant in the context of what we were just talking about. There's quite a bit of mobility going on, I think. So it's not an area that actually I've ever really sort of thought about before we got involved with it. I mean, I think in most cases, people doing project mobility have looked at it pretty much on a case-by-case basis. I'm loving all these comments coming in. You're melting my heart, folks. But Pankaj, tell me a bit about project mobility. What exactly is project mobility?
Sure, Brian. So I think project mobility, I would say, is folks who are working on large projects, generally where we are talking about tens and even hundreds of people who are moving from one country to another to execute certain projects. And these are more relevant in certain industries. I would say more prevalent in some industries rather than also specifically in the IT space, outsourcing, oil and gas, consulting, energy, infrastructure. So these are the organizations that we've seen, or these are the industries that we've seen who deploy a large number of people. The other thing which is there is that these folks.
So hang on, before we get on to the other thing, let me just still summarize. So we're talking about IT, we're talking about oil and gas, we're talking about consulting, those technology, those are the sort of big industries out there in the audience. If you've got experience of moving large groups of people on projects, just write something in the comments box so we get a feel for how widespread, whether you're a vendor, a supplier, or in-house, just give us a feeling of what your experience has been on managing groups of, let's just call them consultants or project managers, moving on these multiple projects. And Pankaj, just on that subject, we talked about the sorts of industries. What's the sort of largest numbers which we're talking about? If you've got a company that's big in this area, how many people might they be moving?
Right. So we could have thousands of folks who are being moved for a bigger kind of an industry, right? In fact, there's one client that we've started working on where the number of moves in a year, and that's actually the number of people who are moving from one assignment to another, and it could be the same person who's moving, is exceeding 10,000 moves a year. So you can imagine the scope that we are talking about. And this
one client is moving doing 10,000 moves a year. And I know there's other companies out there that are sort of even at 20, 30,000 moves. And other companies will be doing maybe 100 or 200 moves. But this is it. I mean, Laura makes the point here, many competing priorities within the talent segments where people need to be moved. And we're going to be talking a lot about that, Laura. So bear with us. We're really going to get into that. But this is such a big issue. So we're talking about large group moves and the need to understand whether it's vendor or, as Sherry says, vendor in-house. So tell us a bit more about it, Pankaj.
Right. So in fact, I'll kind of, before getting into the details, I'll talk about this particular client in a little bit more detail. So they came to us late last year, early this year, and they have been in the market looking for a technology for maybe over 5 years, wanting to see how they could manage this group of population in a more robust manner, because there was no single technology or single source of truth which was available. And basically, we worked with them over the last few months, and we actually developed this particular model. And then we also worked with a few other organizations, and especially in other industries. So we worked with an organization in the IT space, another organization in the engineering space, and that's how we kind of came up with kind of putting together the model for managing the project assignment.
And
I think
what sort of locations might they be going to?
it could be.
It depends by industry, doesn't it? Obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. It could be all kinds of industries, so all kinds of locations. So you could have very developed market folks moving into US and UK and Singapore and other developed locations, and there could be some wild locations like Iraq, Afghanistan, etc. In fact, to share some other experience as well, Brian, in one of my previous organizations, we actually had some of the defense contracts which were being executed through the government, where my previous organization was executing those projects, and the projects were being executed in Afghanistan, Iraq, etc. as well. So all kinds of location is what we are looking at.
Absolutely. So in some cases, we're going into very sophisticated locations. In other cases, we're often going into very dangerous locations. I suppose that could be the case in particular in engineering, in oil and gas. And then also, I suppose, if you're dealing with a big, I don't know, say an engineer or architectural firm, they might be sending people into an area where they're building sort of new airports or new suspension bridges or, new infrastructure projects, which may not necessarily be in, the most, the safest or most sophisticated locations. So tell me a bit about what's involved with a project move, so I can start understanding what some of the challenges could be here.
Right. So the kind of moves typically that we've seen, Brian, over here is that it could be, short-term or long-term moves where people are moving, but we've also seen folks who are kind of commuting on a regular basis between these different locations. We have situations where some of the projects are being run in parallel. So, a particular individual may be working on one project while parallelly they are also working on another project. And what I mean by that is that, these projects are going on parallelly. So at one point of time, they're working on one project, then they kind of come back, go on another project, come back to that project. So it's, number of permutation combinations which are involved. And the skill sets of these people are very different, from different levels in the organizations. You could have engineers at the basic level to project leaders, etc., who are traveling as well. So the profile of the employees is also very, very different based on the needs of the customer. And you could have different profile people working on the same project, etc. as well.
Okay. And I'm guessing that in some cases, or probably many cases, the charges of the consultants are being charged to the client, be it an internal client or an external client. So it becomes even more imperative to actually capture what those costs are, so they can be on charge to the end client. Is that right?
That's absolutely correct. In fact, the related point relating to that is, Brian, that it's not that you're always able to charge to the client whatever may be the cost, right? Because generally, when you're going in for projects, you agree on the contract price right at the beginning, right? So where you are having your folks who are spending more time on a particular project as compared to what was budgeted, that's where you have those kind of issues where you get into a position of cost overrun, etc. So it's very, very important that while the project is being executed, that certainly is an important point, but a lot of time and resources are spent in terms of appropriately planning the project so that what are the challenges involved, what are the timelines involved. And Julia kind of talked about the example of China as well, right? Both inbound and outbound, right? Some folks are able to move easily. Some there are challenges. Some could be totally restricted nationalities where you're not able to move people. So it's very, very important that you have those right expectations, which are set from a cost perspective, from a timeline perspective, from a process perspective.
Okay, and let me bring you into the conversation. Yeah, Nitsan, you were saying.
I said, talking about the cost there, one of the things that, for me was very interesting when I learned about this industry or this part within mobility is when we talk about mobility being strategic, here it's part of really the core delivery of the business. This is not about moving 1% or 5% or 10% of employees. And these organizations that manage project mobility, it's the majority of employees who are mobile. Right? They are deployed in the project. And that's why it becomes so critical to manage the compliance, because it's not just, in 1% we got wrong. This is the majority of our workforce. It becomes a lot more important to get the cost right, as Pankaj was highlighting. And because there is also the impact of the speed, right? So sometimes, and we've seen cases where getting this done right helps mobility win more projects, because they price it better than others, and deliver faster, because sometimes it's not about the cost, it's about who can get me people on the ground faster. That's going to be the decision. And by giving mobilities the tools to be more proactive there, they can also identify the talent to deploy. So really, I think very interesting points that are a sub-segment of mobility, but in that case, it's like, it's heaven for mobility.
Yeah, because as you say, it really gives mobility a chance of being strategic, of helping move people quickly. I think there's also a real cost saving, not just a timing issue here. That in my experience with projects, that if you don't bill something and you sort of just forget about it, if you remember, you find a cost 6 months later or a year later, the ultimate client may turn around and say, whoops, too late, you missed your chance, we're not picking up the tab for that. So actually, it's really important on the mobility team and the line to pick up all the costs so they can actually get billed out to the client on a timely basis before they get in some way time barred and just, the ultimate client refuses to pay.
And especially, Brian, like you mentioned, right? Considering these projects tend to be for much longer period of time, and I mentioned, right, I think it's like maybe 3 to 5 to 7 years in some cases, right? I think that's where, a lot of things fall through the crack and you miss out on things. So unless you have a technology which is helping you kind of get a control of all of this, that's where you run into challenges. The other challenge is there are so many dependencies as well, right? So it's not just that you are working on the mobility process in isolation. We talked about such large volume, and this triggers certain other implications. We did talk about, the security aspects, and I gave the example of Iraq and Afghanistan, which need to be considered from an employee well-being perspective as well. But another one from a compliance perspective is corporate tax, especially what we call as permanent establishment, where you're moving a large number of people from one country to another, and especially where they are generating revenue for your client, right? That's where it becomes more challenging, because unlike individual taxes, etc., which are perhaps more predictable and known in a shorter period of time, the corporate tax or the permanent establishment exposures are actually kind of known much later. So the earlier that you have all stakeholders involved as part of that process, the better you are able to plan and again bake all those costs and compliance obligation and planning opportunities as part of your process.
Okay, so I think we've talked a lot about some of the challenges, and we can get back to some of the challenges and the issues later on. But I think I know what the audience will want. They'll be wanting to say, well, that's the problem. What's the solution? So, Nitzan, maybe you can tell us a little bit about what the solution could be or what the solution is, and let's actually show some technology and see what it is that we can actually do. So maybe, let's do that, Nitzan. Why don't you share your screen and let's talk through. Let's do that.
Sounds great. So I think what we went into building here, and I'll show that in a second, is really an extension to the existing Benivo platform, right? So Benivo already has this ecosystem that supports the HR team in all their processes, from running a cost estimate to a workflow to data generation. We have the relocating employees, where we give them what you call the pizza delivery experience, so they can see in every moment what's happening. They can get all their things done on a single platform, all the communication. And we have, of course, the platform for the partners, suppliers, where they can get access to the relevant information, update the status, submit invoices, etc. And when we looked at that, we said, well, that's not far from the needs of of a project mobility, because project mobility needs all that, but they also need a layer on top of that will allow them to look at this from a mobility point of view, right? So they still need to do vendor management, they still need to deliver an employee experience, there still needs to be letter generations and workflows and cost estimates, but not just on each individual separately and then a spreadsheet to capture the data, but actually to collect that. So that's, and I'll share my screen now, and that's what allowed us to kind of take it to the next level. And just
So what we're doing then is that we're taking technology that is already there, we've refined it, and this was done in conjunction with a number of clients that had the same issue, which was managing project mobility. Okay, so I'm looking at a screen now. You've shared a screen.
Good.
Maybe you could zoom in a little bit to it as well to make it.
So let's go through a walk here, right? So I can see here all my projects, and I can go ahead and I can create a new project, or if I want, I can assign a project into a project manager to create that, and then they will go ahead and create that. And if I go through the flow of creating a project, of course, when this is integrated to the system, it's pre-populate all the project data from the system. But in this case, I can input here the project core details. I can enter the key dates so we can monitor.
So this could be a project like, I don't know, building an oil rig in wherever, Kazakhstan, or building a suspension bridge somewhere else, or doing an IT project in Bangalore or something. So you can make the project whatever you want it to be.
Exactly, yes. And next, I can start and automate some of the workflows, all right? So one of the workflows is a workflow that requires me to get the corporate tax team to provide an assessment. Now, normally, the mobility team will need to send an email and then follow up to make sure they got a response and then save it somewhere or keep it in the email, because sometimes it's going to be 2 to 3 years after that someone will ask, hey, what happened there with the corporate tax? So,
and actually, presumably, sorry, if it's 2 to 3 years after, the chances are that one of the people who sent that email may have left the company.
Absolutely. So that data is saved, not in kind of a accessible single source of truth.
So what we're creating here is, for want of a better phrase, a corporate memory.
A corporate memory with the built-in workflow. So just by toggling this button, I can get the information sent to the corporate tax team. I can go ahead, define the budget. So skip the step, and I'm not going to go over every field. They're all, of course, customizable, but I can define the different locations. And here I have another workflow, because in some of these locations, if I might need to run a security assessment. That's not a technology security, a physical security assessment. And again, instead of
moving somebody into a dangerous location.
Exactly. And instead of going off system, I can do it on the platform, right? So toggle this button and get that information sent to the right team.
This is super cool.
And I can, of course, include a number of locations, because these projects sometimes don't only go to one location, they require a few locations. I can define the project contacts, and then I can look at the personas. At this stage, sometimes, let's say it's a government contract or another way, I'm still bidding here, and we don't even know if there's going to be a project, right? We are checking that, but we can run a quick assessment on what is the required compliance without knowing yet who are the people who are going to be there and what are going to be the costs. So we're going to define the personas of the people traveling. And that can be, let's say, I need 100 technicians, and I know their average level of experience and salary and that kind of information, and then 50 more engineers, and I can input their information, and then I can do two things. I can run a project compliance assessment. So instead of checking each case, I just get a high-level compliance assessment of what will be required in terms of the tax, immigration, social security for the type of people I'm sending. And second, I can get a bulk cost estimate. So how much will that cost us to manage that project?
Okay, so if we got 50 engineers, 100 IT consultants, 30 accountants, I don't know, whatever it might be, you put all those personas in there. it works out all the costs, and then it comes up with an overall bulk cost of what that project might be. Exactly. Yeah. So cool.
All right.
What are we looking at now then?
So now I created a project, and I can go and I can explore all my information in a single place, add notes, add documentation. I can put all the documents in a single place. I can put them into libraries. I can see all the key contacts, really all my information in a single place. I can start plan the project. I can get, this is my project assessment result. So these are the compliance requirements that I will need to follow, and I can start and look at that at a time scale and plan accordingly. What would I need to do when? And next, I can go and I can start and assign talent into this project. Then I can identify the relevant talent that can go into this project. And once I identify, in this case, it's someone called Peter Traveler, what I need to do next is I need to run another compliance assessment on Peter. Because maybe on average, right, someone going from Denmark to Singapore requires that, but maybe Peter already has the visa. Or maybe they've already traveled 20 times this year, and now they're going to trigger another threshold to Singapore. So I can run an immediate assessment also for the compliance of Peter, and can start and manage the talent that is needed to the project and assign the project. So really, it's a tool for me to manage my project mobility on day-to-day and aggregate the data from being only on an assignment level to being in a project level. And in a few minutes, we'll already start to look at the data, and that's where it gets super exciting, kind of how the analytics and that aspect play.
Okay. And Pankaj, what reaction have you seen to this when you've been talking to clients about it?
Oh, absolutely. Very excited. Like I mentioned, Brian, there was the client that we started building this for. They had been in the market for quite some time. They were not able to find anything like this. And then the others also that we are talking to, they're saying that they've not seen anything like this. We continue to, of course, make enhancements based on the feedback, like we always do. Wherever there are client feedback on improvements or any specific features they want to see, we continue to incorporate that. But yeah, it's been kind of created a lot of buzz in the market.
And needless to say, if there's any client out there that has big projects interested in talking about it, then do reach out. But also, if there's any RMC out there that would like to partner where they've got an issue or a challenge managing a client, then again, or potential, do reach out to us, because we are agnostic in that regard, and would like to see what we can do to help the industry and just make things more efficient. Because one of the things you said, Nitzan, when we were chatting earlier, you were talking about one of the problems at the moment is there's a lack of analytics, and people can't use data because they haven't got the data. I think you used the phrase, there's a lack of a central source of truth. So tell us how you can sort of use that data and the sort of things it can achieve, and how you turn reactive into proactive.
Yeah, so that's a topic I'm very passionate about, and we at Benivo are passionate about, because we believe the role for mobility needs to change to be a lot more proactive, driven by data. And this applies also into the project mobility. So I'm going to share my screen now again and look into one of the dashboards we looked at before, right? So we looked at project mobility. So this is the dashboard that measures our immigration support. So we can see at every moment what's the status, how many cases we have, how many cases at each stage of the 6 stages, right? So that pizza experience delivery, we can see at every moment what's happening, and we can identify the cases that are stuck for longer than the SLA at a central level. So we've seen that before. Now is the time to start to look into the project aspect of that, right? And I can look into a specific project. I'm going to look now into Project Alpha. And instead of now trying to figure out what's happening, I can see all the information about this project in a single moment, single place, identify all the potential roadblockers, identify who is ready to travel, am I likely here to meet the project deadline requirements, are there any concerns I should flag now to the project management early, whether it's an employee who is behind on their visa application or someone who requires additional support to make sure they can get there on time. And
so, for example, if you're sending people out in batches, you may be able to say, well, actually, based on where we are, these are the people who should be in your first batch because they're the ones who are most likely to get their visa first. Or it may be you can say, if we're moving people from into one country, let's say we're taking people into, I don't know, Shanghai, and some are coming from Singapore, and some are coming from India, and some are coming from Germany or wherever, we can actually say, well, these groups are most likely to get through in time first. So we can actually start being very, very strategic about the way we actually handle that project.
Exactly. And we can get into the who can be there, what are the issues, what are my red flags, and then be proactive about resolving them, right? Whether it's I can similar way analyze my costs, right? So I can analyze all my costs on an assignment level. We've seen that before, but now I can also look at a project level and see what are the drivers of cost here and what is the estimate versus actual of this project. And and how many, if I have any cost estimates that are pending approval, so I can really manage a subset of the information, and then we can also expose that, right? So the project manager can access a lot of the information that is relevant for them, so they don't need to ask us so many questions, and they can see only what's relevant to their projects. So it's a collaborative tool also to other stakeholders in the organization, whether it's a
you talked about it very briefly. So you talked about it very briefly, but this will do the cost estimate as well there.
Yes. So here I'm looking at cost estimates, and I can see here the difference between the estimates to the actual and how much we spent on this project and what are the key cost drivers. All of that insights I can get in just a few clicks, and unlike before where I had to figure out and filter what's going on, here I can just see it on a specific project.
In fact, Brian, I'd like to just mention on the cost estimates. I think that's the real value which is there. When you're bidding for a project, you want to know how much is it going to cost, right? And that's where, if you're able to pull together the bulk cost estimates, you're able to estimate the different costs, the compliance costs, the tax costs, etc. That's something which is very, very key to ensure that you're appropriately budgeting and quoting the right price.
Okay, and we've looked at it pretty much here from the perspective of the company. But what's it like then looking at it from the perspective of the employee? Sorry, Nitsa, I don't know if there's something else you wanted to show there, but maybe show that and then let's look at it from the employee's perspective.
Yeah, no, let's talk a little bit about the employee, because that's the project point of view in terms of the budget. In terms of the employee experience, it's very similar. So there's a single platform where they can do anything from signing any document they need to getting the status update, what's going on with their visa application, to submitting a trip if they need to get a trip assessment, and to be able to understand, can I go or not go? What's the decision there? And what additional services are going to be needed for me. So it's really giving them, the employee, a single place to manage everything they need to do, whether it's a short-term assignment or commuter or someone going on a one-way move or a long-term assignment, really helping to kind of bring everything into a single place.
Okay, and something actually I discussed when Darren was on the show at the beginning, we were talking about the fintech side and the expenses. And I'm guessing that people going on projects have huge expenses because they're living off allowances and per diems, and they're submitting receipts all the time. So tell us a bit, just for people who don't remember it, just tell us a bit about how the expense system, we've only got about 5 minutes left, about how the expense system works and how this links into the project management.
So you say you gave me 5 minutes to talk about a process that also takes 5 minutes. I think it's perfect. Because that's what's unique about this expense reimbursement that we've built, that instead of taking days or weeks until the process happens and it's completed, they can just take their phone, take a picture, click next, and the money is going to be in their bank account within 5 minutes, right? Up to 1 working day, depends how they want to get paid. that's it. It's very, very, very easy. There is an AI algorithm behind the scene that is checking every receipt, that is making a decision based on the company specific policies, right? Some companies allowing to stay in a hotel at that level. Other companies are requesting only if you travel for that number of hours before you get an extra meal. All those rules are into the algorithm, and it's able to really save time, streamline the experience, and expose a lot of data that was not available to identify patterns of spend. So all that ability, the ability to automate the payments of per diem and any other allowances that employees are sometimes eligible to, all of that is kind of what they have on the same platform.
And what sort of volumes can go through that?
And we've seen in, as Pankaj said, right, in the tens of thousands of people going into projects. And in terms of payments, we've seen the other day, I think it was $20 million or something like that, processing 36 hours in expense reimbursement. So definitely it's test to the scale and volume.
Okay, so if out there you work for a company where you are reimbursing your assignees and it takes a month for them to be reimbursed, then remember that can change, and rather than people waiting 30 days, they can be reimbursed within 5 minutes, depending on the banking system, but 5 minutes or so. So it's extraordinary how the world has changed, and that's before we even look further at what GPT is bringing down the line, which we do not have time to talk about today. But I know Nitzan, maybe just say about a word about how influential GPT has been within everything Benivo's doing at the moment.
It's just phenomenal to see how it impacts the way we work. We are, on a mission to save in Benivo, just from our work, 10,000 hours on GPT, right? Just by utilizing it in our day-to-day. Just imagine, what can we do with additional 10,000 hours? That's incredible. And then, of course, bringing it also as something that comes into the product. We showed a little bit of that with Microsoft in previous shows. We will show more, because it's just mind-blowing to see how our role is changing from writers to editors and giving us these superpowers to get our next promotion.
That's such a great point. Again, I think we said it on the show the other week, but it bears repetition. Going forward, as mobility professionals, we should never have to write another email, ever. The days of writing email should be over. All we should be doing is editing an email that the system has prepared for us. We should never be having to write a policy, write a letter to an assignment letter. Again, everything we do, we should be editors. So it's like having the world's best personal assistant, or the world's best managerial assistant, even working with us. So the future is very, very exciting. We're getting towards the top of the hour. So I'm going to bring back onto stage the wonderful Darren Grist, who it's now 11 o'clock for him in Ho Chi Minh City. We're bringing Julia Onslow-Cole. Chris Chalk says amen. I certainly agree to that. And of course, bring our wonderful producer, Tally, back. So Darren, I mean, you're seeing some of this for the first time. I mean, what's your take on the way the technology is going?
I like that. I mean, if I was certainly working within the oil and gas or engineering, I would be very keen on that project mobility. I think that would make a big difference to the mobility world. And I think it's exciting in how the tech overall is developing at such a quick pace. I mean, you look at the impact ChatGPT's had on us in a very short period of time. And I'm sure that as we understand it a bit more, it will only be in our lives more and more.
Okay, well, we are now at the top of the hour. So thank you, everybody, for your participation. Julia, I wish Fragment a very happy 20th birthday in the UK. And to the audience, I just got touched with all the kind wishes that you passed through on the birth of my little baby granddaughter. So really, really appreciate that, everybody. We will be back this time next week when we're going to be talking about a career well traveled with the wonderful Spencer Reynolds from Takeda. So thank you all, everybody, and we will see you this time next week. Take care, everybody, and goodbye from all of us at The View from the Top.
Thank you. Bye-bye.